I've done this so many times now, and it has never been an argument with the C-suite to sign it off with the
Mhm.
steering board. It's never been an
Yep.
argument. They've always said, hey, this is great. This is
Yep.
wonderful, because what you're doing is you're actually taking into account what we have, what we do, our
Yes.
culture, how
Yep.
we do things, etc.,
Yep.
with your framework and your years of experience and so forth. And the two married together are going to create a successful project.
Yep.
And to be honest, and I have to be, it hasn't worked sometimes. In a majority of cases,
Yep.
yes, it has.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things I teach on my driving change management course. Is the second half of it is all about my practical framework approach to change. Excuse me a minute, I've got to
Yep.
get frog in my throat.
Welcome to the Business Transformation Podcast. And in this episode, we're going to be talking to one of those industry experts. We are speaking to one and only Mr. Ron Leeman, who is actually the GOAT. This is we've had a few guests on the podcast, but I have to say Ron is probably the most experienced actual practitioner. The difference between a practitioner and an academic. Rod has been in the business for more than probably I've been on this earth, which is still a long time. So, Ron, thank you for being here. You're coming in from all the way other side of the world right now in Thailand, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
Well,
oh, lovely Thailand. I've been here since 2011 and thoroughly enjoyed it. Although the sort of landscape of the sort of politics in Thailand has changed quite a bit since I first came here. It's settling down again a little bit. Things are quite easy going here. It's nice cost of living, nice cheap sort of cost of living,
yep,
and
yep.
the weather's nice apart from rainy season, which it is now.
Oh,
But yeah, I've been here for 2011, so nearly 12, 13 years. Thoroughly enjoyed it and made a conscious decision to move here in 2011 because I just really didn't like, or was not, how can I put it? Not didn't was the wrong word. I was not too happy with the kind of way the UK was moving in terms of its politics and so forth. And I think what's going on nowadays is kind of sort of helps that decision or supports that decision I made then,
yep.
because there's all sorts of things going on. But yes, I love Thailand, and it gave me the opportunity to work in different countries here in Asia, Singapore, Indonesia, places like that. Here in
Yep.
Thailand as well, obviously, different sort of culture, the way they practice change and so forth. So yeah, I had to understand the cultures of the countries I was going to work in, because here it's
Yeah.
very heavily biased by the country culture. Uh,
Uh-huh.
and one of the big things about change here in Asia is building relationships. You can't just go in with your size 10s and say, this is what we're going to do. This is the change
Yep.
management plan.
Yep.
This is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to deliver it. You have to build up a relationship
Yes. Yep.
with your sponsors, with your stakeholders,
Yep.
etc. So
Yep.
that takes time,
Yes.
normally over 2, 3, 4 weeks, maybe. And then once you've built up that relationship and trust in you and what you're
Yep.
doing, then things start to become safe, straight sailing, basically. But
Uh-huh. You
yeah,
can speak
I've
freely.
thoroughly enjoyed working here, and I can now deliver my training, which I've been doing since 2019, to the world. Yeah,
Yeah, nice
I've
one.
done
Nice one.
about I've done delivered training to about 20%, not of the world's population, about
Yeah.
20% of people in different countries. But now I've done about
Oh, okay.
20%
Yeah.
of the all of the countries in the world where I've delivered to either one person or a few people, which is great. And
It's good
all
exposure.
I've got, what I've got as an overhead is a laptop and a Zoom account.
Oh, you're very mobile.
Yeah.
You like to be light, travel light. Okay, so for the audience, yeah,
Yeah, I try and keep it simple, and it's just like my training is very simple, very easy going. It's very specific, it's pragmatic, it's practical, and so forth.
yeah,
I do like to keep things simple. I don't like to complicate things. I'm not a overly heavily focused technology person, although I do understand technology.
yeah,
I do AI now.
yeah,
I do AI and whatever
yeah,
way AI is going, and put my hands up. Yes, I do use it, but I don't use it in a way that is like overly, okay, I'll take what AI says as
yeah.
right and not edit it. What I
You say,
tend to
yeah,
do is tend to write articles or whatever, put it into AI, get AI to screen it and say,
Validate,
you may want to
verify.
think
Yeah,
about this, you may want to think about that, and then edit it.
yeah,
And you edit it to make it yours,
yes,
basically. So you can say, I don't agree with that, with
yeah,
what you've said, Mr. AI, Mr.
yeah,
ChatGPT, or whoever. I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
agree with that. I think it's this. So you change it. And that's the beauty, of AI. And not a lot of people do that. What they do is they take the answer they get from AI
yeah.
at face
No
value.
thinking. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's been proven time and time again that some of the sort of things that AI says, whichever sort of application you want to use, it's been proven time and time again that they sometimes lie.
yeah,
They
yeah. They make
sometimes
it
make
up.
things
They
up.
make it up. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so that will bring us into the agenda. As so, for audiences, we covered the
Okay.
3 points. Is the what is the industry doing right or wrong? And I think you were starting to allude to it there about maybe just copy and pasting for no thinking. So we'll get into that. What's the industry doing in terms of change management, whether it's locally, Asia, or globally? What have they got right? What are
Hmm.
they continually not getting right? I think just quickly there, I've seen now probably in the last 5 years that there's always now been a change manager or is a change manager on the stakeholder list as part of the core team from the very beginning, which probably 10 years ago wasn't. And
No,
so
you're right.
that's a change I'm starting to see. So I like that. And number two is there a particular approach that you follow when you go in to do your work with clients and on change management? And I'll give the audience a little bit of a tip here that Ron is a when I say goat, I'm not joking. Ron is more years experience as a practitioner as a change manager leader, also consultant, formerly of the UK many years ago. Was at the Ministry of Defence, started as being a consultant, got clients around the world, Europe, Asia, Americas. He's covered all the spectrums from oil and gas, BP, with pharmaceutical, and everything in between. So this is where it's
Yeah.
coming from. So that's the second question. And then the third one, your many years of experience. What if you could do it all again, knowing what you know, the clients you've worked with, the different cultures you've experienced, what would you do different? And that'll be really the takeaways that the audience will go, okay, Ron's just now saved me 50 years plus with his years of experience. So kick us off, Ron, in terms of the industry. What's the industry got right or wrong? And I think you were just saying here, technology's coming around, but people aren't thinking, they're just copying.
Okay, what's the industry got right or wrong? That's an
Yeah.
interesting question, actually, because one of the big issues that certainly I've come across before, and I think is still an issue, industries, is they often, a specific industry often says we want somebody or a change manager that has experience in our industry sector.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
want anyone that doesn't have
Yeah.
experience. I think that's completely wrong.
Yeah.
And just to give you an idea of when I first started in this business of change so many years ago, when I went onto the contract market, should I say, and that was about 1996, I started off because I worked for a bank, which was then Abbey Building Society first, Abbey National, then Abbey, which then became Santander, Banco Santander.
Oh,
But I
yeah.
left Abbey to go on the contract market, and I started off in financial services. Okay,
Yep.
industry experience, you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But then I thought, wait a minute, what I'm doing for every contract I go into, I'm doing the same things. I'm
Mm.
engaging with stakeholders. I'm looking at sponsors. I'm helping sponsors, etc. I'm doing communication. I'm doing training. I'm doing all these things, and they're
Yeah.
exactly the same.
Yeah.
There's no difference.
Mm.
Uh,
Mm.
so I started branching out, and I've sort of ended up working in about 25 different industry sectors. And the thing about that is that if you actually come into an industry sector that you have already got experience in,
Mm-hmm.
what can you offer them?
Yes.
No innovation, because you
Mm.
know about the
Yeah.
industry sector. If you
Yeah.
go in with a
Mm.
clear mind, without the industry sector experience, like that's what I've done. I did pharmaceuticals without being involved in pharmaceuticals. I did heavy lift equipment without being involved in the industry sector before, etc. And you
Yep.
come in with a completely different mindset.
Yeah.
And you
And
can
fresh
come up with
ideas.
quite
Yeah.
innovative practices and implement ways of implementation and stuff like that,
Mm.
with that very clear, open mind without the
Yes.
blinkers on. So I think that's slowly changing nowadays. Try to keep my sort of focus on what's going on,
Yep.
but you can notice still, although I don't keep an eye on sort of advertised jobs, you can still see on occasions where people are saying, or industry organisations are saying, we want industry sector experience.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
And that kind of leads me on to say, and we would want also this kind of change management experience, which is another sort of slightly different way of saying, without these, we're not going to take you on.
Yes.
No, that's wrong.
Yeah.
A change manager doesn't necessarily have to have that industry sector experience. An organisation should think a little bit before they start saying, this is what we want. Keep it fairly open and let people actually apply for a role that they know they can do, regardless of whether they've been in that industry sector before. The other thing with organizations nowadays, and I know this has probably been said before, is change is happening all the time. Change used to be, yes, we implement one kind of solution and that's it. Start, finish, go live, gone. Now it's constant because it happens all the time.
Probably faster now, faster than ever before.
Yeah, it is fast moving, and you have to keep pace with that. And that's one of the big problems with change management, is keeping pace with all the things that are happening, especially looking at AI. But one of the issues that I have personally, and I think other people have as well, based on the sort of statistics and research I've looked at, is that people are grabbing AI and they're just saying, okay, we need this. We need this as an organization to try and get better than our competitors, etc. Get on with it. Without saying, oh, wait a minute, why? Why do we need this? What are the benefits of actually implementing this?
Okay.
So that's the other thing. And people, organizations need to take a step back and think about why they want it. So it's just not a matter of throwing this thing into an organization, say, okay, people get on with it, because some people embrace it, some people won't, some people will be resisting it, etc. So you're not getting a consensus of opinion about where in the organization AI will make a big difference. So I think organizations need to take a step back a little bit, and I think mainly at two levels: leadership level, because there is an issue that still leaders do not understand change management the way it should be done properly.
Okay.
So there's an education issue there.
I was about to say,
also,
education.
Also at stakeholder level, where you are actually, people are trying to change the name again, by the way, managing the process. Okay, so you're like, for want of a better phrase, piggy in the middle between the two.
Oh yes.
And you have to keep
hopefully you're the conduit, but most of the time you are the piggy in the middle. Yes.
Yeah, it is, and you have to deliver what you said you could deliver, because the leadership or the steering group are expecting you to do this within a specific period of time, and stakeholders are expecting you to actually engage with them and tell them all what it's all about and so forth, so they can actually help you implement the process. And the other sort of, I suppose it's a little bit of an issue, is where a change manager sits in the organization. A lot of occasions, a change manager probably sits in the project team or in the IT department or whatever, and is one step removed away from the business. What I believe is, you are the change manager, is the conduit into the business. So they should have a separate role. They shouldn't be part of the project. They should help the project team, but they should be very much business facing towards the business in terms of engagement and so forth, because it's the business that are going to make this, whatever it is you're delivering, a success. It's not the project managers or the steering group. They're not going to do it. It's the change, the people that are going to accept and embrace the change, that are going to make it successful.
Okay, so you're saying, so in say business transformation, there's this new role. I think it's an emerging role. They're the chief transformation officer. So they've now, the transformation stakeholders have got a seat at the table now through this chief transformation officer. Provided, I think to your point, is that they're not connected. For example, most of the time, say a business architect or architecture is connected to technology. And so they're always coated with the blanket of, you come from technology. And so the business go, it's just
Yep.
technology. It's going, you know what? It's if you got the change manager coming from projects, then they're tainted with a different brush. They're not. They should, as you're saying, they are part of the business. They represent the business. They're the voice of the business to the project to get the wants and needs, the requirements implemented. But with they're sitting or reporting from technology, this is just another technology stakeholder, and I don't get the gravitas or the.
I've got a mantra. It's people first, followed by
Yes.
processes, and then technology.
Yes.
Yeah?
Oh, yes.
Because at the end of the day, if you're delivering a technology solution, it's not going to happen. People are not going to adopt and use it unless they understand it. And so it's the people, and it's the people's minds you have to change. The other slight issue I do have, you said business transformation, some people call it digital transformation, etc. Is transformation the same as change?
Yes.
I've written about this several times. I think it is. Now, just to give you a bit of an anecdote, 25 years ago, dare I say it, I was working for a government department, and we actually implemented digital transformation. Because what it was the way that ministers actually asked for briefings when they were going to ask a question in Parliament was very fragmented. So they had briefing authors that were sat in the business all over the place. What we actually delivered, and I was working as an associate for a consultancy. Can't remember what they were called, but they went on to be called CMG, I think, or something like that. Anyway, that doesn't really matter.
Okay.
The fact is that we built a central repository for briefing systems, a structured way of creating the briefing, etc., which anybody could use at any time, but obviously with certain levels of restriction on it, because certain weren't allowed access to certain elements of a brief. It was a restricted brief or a confidential brief, etc. So we actually built a central repository. And all the briefings that briefing authors used to produce for ministers started to be built in this repository. So it was digitalization, not digitalization. So that was 25 years ago. And so that's why I asked the question, is transformation the same as change? I believe it is. And we still actually have a bit of a hang up on what we call change. I've got to say, I've always been a change manager. I don't call myself a transformation manager or whatever. And with due respect to what you do, Heath, I'm not challenging you or anything here. But I identify as a change manager because that's what it's all about. When people start to say, it's time we change the name, it's time we did this, it's time we did that, oh dear. Well, okay. If you want to change the name, and I've just written an article about this, I don't know when I'm going to put it onto LinkedIn. If you want to change the name, you try it. You get, when you put the search string change manager into Google, you get 3.6 billion hits. 3.6 billion hits. Okay, you've got duplication, triplication, quadruplication. But even if you take a small percentage of that, the word change manager, number of hits on Google. You try and change that. No way. That would be the biggest change management project in the world. But then I believe it's all about horses for courses. In other words, if your organization wants to call it business transformation, you're the transformation manager. If they want to call it facilitator, fine. You're the change facilitator. It doesn't matter so long as you're doing the right thing. So long as you focus on the people, on their normal processes, and then on the technology.
There's a well-kept secret in business transformation that no one is talking about. And that's 70% of business transformations fail. Wasting time, money, and missed opportunities. There are 4 common causes of project failure: lack of business user involvement, lack of senior leadership support, changing requirements, and incomplete requirements. Clients, however, don't know this, and more importantly, they don't know what to do. They're either told they need reams and reams of beautiful PowerPoint presentations, but they're really just marketing documents. Marketing for the consultancy to convince you of the more work they will bill you for. They are just designed to run up the billable hours, or they're told to send your staff off to do training to get certified in old, outdated methods that results in 70% failure. Clients know if they bring in the Big Four, they will get a Big Four bill and no transformation. They load the project up with junior staff that produce interesting but useless documentation that they will tell you it is needed, that is full of jargon and the latest buzzwords. It sounds very impressive, but means absolutely nothing. It's well known in the industry. You get a Big Four in, they'll steal your watch to tell you the time, and you pay them millions for the favor. That's the old broken model of business transformation. If you're ready to move to the new model of business transformation, join me. My name is Heath Gascoigne, and I'm the author of this book, The Business Transformation Playbook: How to Implement Your Organization's Target Operating Model, TOM, and achieve a 0% failure rate using the 6-step Agile framework, HOBA, House of Business Architecture, that I created and have been using for over 15 years with my private clients, including the UK government, FTSE 100 companies and startups. I'm the guy the clients call to come in and set up and turn around their failing transformations. If you're a business owner, leader or manager, a change or transformation consultant, or you lead one, and you want to move to the new model of transformation, I'm holding a free 90-minute masterclass to get your 2023 year off to the best possible start with your transformation. Make sure you join me. You need to know where and how you're going wrong and what exactly you need to do and only do, not boiling the ocean trying to do everything, especially how to don't get caught in the interesting but useless documentation trap, and how to avoid joining the 70% that fail, but instead join the top 30% club that make business transformation a success first time, on time. Details how to register are below this video. Click the link below. Whether you're a beginner or an expert, we'll get you started. So are you saying in terms of the industry then that they may be, and I think education might be part of the solution, but the issue is that they're getting caught up in the name, not about the activity, about the outcome they want to achieve is transforming, changing, losing focus, focus on the wrong things.
I think you're right. One of the things I say on my training is once you get to you get a title of, say, manager, how difficult would it be if you went into an organizational change type situation to take away that name from that individual and call them a facilitator, because they worked hard to become a manager and they want to keep the name. Regardless of what it means in the context of what you're doing. So you try and change a name. And people do get too hung up on, am I a change manager? Am I a transformation manager? Am I a facilitator or whatever? And people get too hung up on that. Call yourself what the hell you like. It doesn't matter. So long as you are delivering what you're expected to deliver and you're focusing, like I'm going to repeat myself now, we focus on the people side of change. Well, I now call that people science, by the way. I'm just going to throw that in because it's been known as the people side of change for too long. And I've now I've reframed it into people science because
people science. Okay, I heard it here first. So I'm going to quote you from now on. With the creator of people science belongs to Ron Leeman.
Because people, it's all about neuroscience, how their brain reacts to change. It's all about psychology. It's all about behavioral science. So you've got these real, what I would call hard sciences that are behind the way people react to change. So why not call it people science and reframe it as people science? Because that is what drives people. It's the way the brain acts when it gets hit with change and it starts this sort of the threat or whatever mechanism. I can't remember what it's called now.
Fight, flight.
It's it's the way they react. So let's get away from the people side of change, because I think this is one of the issues with, you talk about people are a bit worried about get hung up on a name. And the name people side of change in the context of when, say, a C-suite manager of some sort looks at it, they think it's a bit fluffy. What is this? What is this? There's no. What they're going to do? They're going to try and change culture. They're going to manage resistance. I don't understand what this is. What this means. I don't really understand that. I don't get it. So they regard it as fluffy, and one of the problems there is if they regard it as fluffy, they don't cough up with the money.
For invest in it.
change manager or business transformation manager, or whatever you want to call them. They say, no, we'll do it with a project manager. Project
Yeah,
manager, no chance, because
yeah,
project management, and again, I'm not deriding project management, but they have a different focus.
yeah,
They're actually their brain works in a different way than a change manager.
yes,
Yeah, they're fairly,
yeah,
they've got the blinkers on. They know they have to deliver to time, cost, quality, scope,
yeah,
etc., and
yeah,
so
yeah,
forth. They have to
yeah,
do, follow a project plan, etc. Whereas change managers are dealing with people and how people are act and so forth. So
yes, yeah,
it's a
yeah,
different animal.
yeah,
And the C-suite, or the people that sit behind providing budgets for projects, are still hung up on this fluffy. This is a little bit, I don't
yeah,
understand. I
yes.
don't understand what it is, and that's why I said it's about education.
Yeah, it comes
To
right back to the
educate.
education. Absolutely.
Yeah, you need to educate the C-suite, the managers that kick off these projects, to say you need change management.
Yep.
However, having
Uh,
said that, I'm sorry if I'm going on,
no, you're right.
but
You're right.
there is a bit of a disparity now, what I'm going to come up with, because what you have is you have lots of organizations, you have lots of consultancies saying, to be successful with this implementation, you need change management.
Mm.
However, they're in opposition to that. I'm going back to we mentioned the 70%, which is a fallacy, which is a
Yeah.
McKinsey sort of fairy
Yep.
tale. However, most surveys now come in that people do, whether it be the McKinseys of this world or the Boston Consulting Group or whatever,
Yeah.
they always
Yep.
come in and they always seem to say between 60 and 80% of
Yeah.
projects fail.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's that disparity?
Mm.
People are saying you need change management for success, whereas surveys are saying change management is not, projects are not very successful. There's a problem there. There's a gap there somewhere. And I've been meaning to try and get into this gap for a long while now, about how you determine what success is. Yeah. Because
Yes.
everybody looks at success in a different way. And I want to get under the skin, and I've not been able to because I haven't got time, because I'm training
Yep. Yep.
trainees all the time and stuff like that. But I'd love for somebody to say, hopefully somebody listening to this podcast say, hey Ron, we'd like you to actually research that. Here's a big wedge of
Water
money.
cash.
Go
Yeah. Yeah.
ahead.
And do it.
What does success mean, and what does failure mean, and how do you actually put it into context? Yeah, how do you measure it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to get that down into that level of granularity. That's the way it is. I can't do it at the moment.
Yeah, I think there's probably two parts in it. Right, is one is qualitative and quantitative, but they're also measuring different things. You know, execs
Yeah,
got their version of the truth for the future, and then down in
yeah,
operations have got their version. And if you've got consultants somewhere in the middle, they'll muddle it up and they'll
yeah.
combine the two, and so everyone's confused. And yeah,
My current thinking about success and failure, the best way to measure it, and you can do it via business benefits or time, cost,
yes,
quality, and
yeah,
scope, or
yeah,
KPIs or whatever, OKRs,
yeah,
etc.,
yeah,
is build a balanced business scorecard with
yeah,
different measures in both quantitative and qualitative.
yeah,
So you might have measures for customer engagement or stakeholder engagement. You might have measures for training competency. You might have measures for business readiness. You might have measures for usage and adoption. And again, each of those measures has some kind of achievement target. Yeah.
yeah,
So you build a balanced scorecard and you say, okay, we've got training in this, we've got business readiness, we've got usage adoption and so forth, and stakeholder engagement in this. Yeah. What have we achieved in each of these
mm,
sectors within the
yeah,
business balance scorecard? And then you look at it and you say, okay, on overall, we've actually achieved whatever the percentage is,
yes,
80%, 70%, 80%
yep,
success of each of those measures. Yeah.
yeah,
And you have a level that you have to try and achieve. Yeah.
mm,
And you
benchmark,
aggregate all the different elements of the business scorecard together and say, okay, this has been successful because
mm,
we've hit the quantitative, we've hit the qualitative targets for
yes,
these components of the scorecard.
yeah.
And that is my favorite approach at the moment, but I don't think anyone agrees with me.
You'll be the champion of it then. You're going to champion the business balance scorecard. So I'm learning a couple of things here. So thank you. So we've got two takeaways for me already. One was the people science. I'm quoting Mr. Ron Leeman on the people science. It is a people science. The
Yeah,
yeah, I think it's like you're saying. It's an indication. It's like these projects will say that it's a business transformation or some other form of change, and they'll focus solely on the technology, and then they wonder why when the business users or the stakeholders in the project were speaking with the consultants or the business analysts and taking these requirements, and they go, I don't understand a word they're saying, but they look at their watch and they'll go, these guys are going to be here for a month or two, and then they're going to leave. We'll just play nice and we'll disagree everything in the room, and when they leave, we'll go back to how it was before because they don't understand the thing the same. And then that's where I see when I get called into these projects, it's usually 1 or 2 years after it's either started or it's 1 or 2 years after the second one started. And it's like, well, what did you do the first time? And so like, you guys aren't learning, you're doing the same old thing.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on, because I'm getting the same message from some of the trainees I'm training. I'm actually getting quite a few trainees that are quite mature change managers now. So they've been in the business for quite a few years. They've been through ProSci, or they've been through APMG, or they've got CCMP or whatever. So I'm getting quite a few of these people. And the anecdotal evidence they're giving me is that, got these programs, these big programs going on, and people are managing these programs, but they're so fragmented because they're so big that people are not speaking to each other, because so each one is not understanding their impacts on the different parts of the organization. And they don't want to, because again, it's about defending your turf.
Yes, exactly. Your empire.
Wait a minute, this is going to impact my area of the business quite heavily. What am I going to do? I'm not going to really speak about it. I'm not going to actually resist this. I'm going to actually just put it on the back burner, if you like, and not speak to people. And that's one of the problems. It's this fragmented, overarching way of delivering these big programs that is not working, because you don't have that consensus of opinion, that understanding, and you get infighting when you're presenting on the steering board, and the communication is always watered down, and so forth. I believe my view is that to be successful, you just need to get people talking to each other, for goodness sake. You need to get people to say, this is my area, this is how it's going to impact my area, and this is what I'm doing about it. How can I help with other people? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what you're doing. Let's talk about what you're doing. Let's take information, all this information. And you should be getting maybe the sponsor who's going to be a bit more active in the process and say, hey, that part of the business came up with a good idea. I think we should actually implement this across the whole business in terms of this specific program, because it's working for them, so it could work for everyone else. And that's the problem. People are trying to deliver so much in a short period of time, and the impact on the stakeholders and other people is just unbelievable. And this is where we talk about constant change, etc. So it's about getting your act together. It's when you're talking, say, in a pub, you've got a few friends there, etc., and you're providing each other with their ideas and so forth, and you come up with all these wonderful innovations and etc., and that's it. You forget about it. Wait a minute. If you think of a different way of doing this that's going to be more successful, talk about it. Tell people about it. Bring it up at the steering group and get some kind of consensus from the whole of the program or the project to actually implement this, because it seems to work. And I think that's the big problem, is this sort of fragmented approach to delivering these big projects. And let's AI, throw it at the business, let them sort it out, let them understand it, and then we'll go in later and try and sort it out.
You're throwing it over the fence. You raised some great points there. You talked about get the sponsor. So the audience, if you missed that, so the get the sponsor is you could say it is the hippo, the highest paid person in the room, or it is if we talked about whether the fallacy or otherwise about the projects fail. So what's the causes of project fail? There's a bit of research out there, and one of them, the highest one being lack of business user involvement, and then lack of senior leadership support. And you just said it. You just said it, to get the sponsor so that's the senior leadership support. So get that, and then there's a change in requirements and incomplete requirements. But the other one that you said was great, and what you said at the very beginning about the vision. And so so maybe to help the fragmented projects and everyone's defending their spot or their empire, is to say, and this is where I've seen it now for client I'm helping, is that they'll have an organization's vision and they've got a program of work created, and they'll say, we've already got the vision. And I said, what's the organization's vision? But what about this division within the organization? And then they try to, what's the word, force their version into the higher. It's, you know what, you need a specific one to solve your problems that you've got down here in this division. And then, so they're trying to, from the very beginning. Go.
Okay, go on.
Go.
Let me talk about sponsors first. A given that sponsors are the number one factor for change management or business transformation success. Yeah, without an active and engaged sponsor that's willing to take it on their shoulders to actively participate and talk to stakeholders, etc., your project is likely to fail.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the issue is that some sponsors are railroaded into the role and say, you're going to be the sponsor, whether you want to be or not. And they probably don't have time because they've got all these other sort of commitments, etc. Or the sponsor says, or the person that's nominated says, yeah, I'll take it on, and all of a sudden what they do is they actually say to their sort of sidekick, you do
delegate it.
And delegate, and that's not good, because the sponsor needs to be fairly high in the sort of high level of hierarchy. And the other thing is that a lot of sponsors don't understand change. They don't understand the sort of aspect of change because they think about it as, again, going back to the fluffy aspect. Okay, so sponsors are critical to change project success. Let me talk about, what was the other issue we talked about? You mentioned at the end.
Vision.
Can't remember. I've lost track now.
The vision or the fragmented part?
Oh, the vision. Yeah, the vision.
Yeah.
This is one thing. Remember, I talked about models and methodologies earlier on. That a lot of methodologies, models, change management, whatever they are, do include a vision. Like Kotter's 8 steps includes a vision, etc. So it's important to have an understanding or a view of where you're going. Otherwise, what the hell are you doing it for? Why are you doing it? So you've got this vision of an organization, say, that's using all these different AI solutions to actually make things more efficient, your customer interaction better, and so forth. Yeah. So you have this vision, and you have to stick to that vision, visit the vision every time, just to make sure that you keep your stakeholders involved and understanding why you're actually doing this project. Some of the transformation projects last for months and months and months. So
sometimes years.
Trying to lose sight of why you're trying to implement this specific project or program. So you need to remind them. Remember what we said at the beginning. We have a vision. Now, one of the issues now is that if the way change is now being delivered, still not susceptible, are you still able to create a vision? Because change is not becoming project specific or program specific anymore. It's becoming constant. Okay. I suppose what I'm saying is you probably need an overall vision for the organization. Of which all these different change programs that are going on actually look at. So this is where we want to be in 5 years' time. Organization, we want to be the biggest, the best, etc. We want to be able to say, in terms of sort of our financial operations, we're the most profitable. In terms of our customer engagement, we've got the highest rates ever. This is where we want to be. And these specific things that we're doing are all in line with that vision. Okay. So that's where you want to be with a vision. But people, the previous way was you had a vision for the specific implementation. That's changed now. It's an organizational vision. Yes, absolutely. You need it because you need to keep reminding people about why you're doing this.
It is the number one. I call the vision the number one requirement. There's a well-kept secret in business transformation that no one is talking about, and that's 70% of business transformations fail, wasting time, money, and missed opportunities. There are 4 common causes of project failure: lack of business user involvement, lack of senior leadership support, changing requirements, and incomplete requirements. Clients, however, don't know this, and more importantly, they don't know what to do. They're either told they need reams and reams of beautiful PowerPoint presentations, but they're really just marketing documents. Marketing for the consultancy to convince you of the more work they will bill you for. They are just designed to run up the billable hours, or they're told to send their staff off to do training to get certified in old, outdated methods that results in 70% failure. Clients know if they bring in the Big Four, they will get a Big Four bill and no transformation. They load the project up with junior staff that produce interesting but useless documentation that they will tell you it is needed, that is full of jargon and the latest buzzwords. It sounds very impressive, but means absolutely nothing. It's well known in the industry. You get a Big Four in, they'll steal your watch to tell you the time, and you pay them millions for the favor. That's the old broken model of business transformation. If you're ready to move to the new model of business transformation, join me. My name is Heath Gascoigne, and I'm the author of this book, The Business Transformation Playbook: How to Implement Your Organization's Target Operating Model, TOM, and achieve a 0% failure rate using the 6-step Agile framework, HOBA, House of Business Architecture, that I created and have been using for over 15 years with my private clients, including the UK government, FTSE 100 companies and startups. I'm the guy the clients call to come in and set up and turn around their failing transformations. If you're a business owner, leader or manager, a change or transformation consultant, or you lead one, and you want to move to the new model of transformation, I'm holding a free 90-minute masterclass to get your 2023 year off to the best possible start with your transformation. Make sure you join me. You need to know where and how you're going wrong and what exactly you need to do and only do, not boiling the ocean trying to do everything, especially how to don't get caught in the interesting but useless documentation trap, and how to avoid joining the 70% that fail, but instead join the top 30% club that make business transformation a success first time, on time. Details how to register are below this video. Click the link below. Whether you're a beginner or an expert, we'll get you started. But I like what you're saying. So the audience, if you're missing it, is that Ron is saying reminding. And what I see is on one of the projects I'm having this client with at the moment, which I've been there on and off over for about 6 years since I've been in the UK. And we've only just kicked it off and we've got an approach approved. And we're probably, to be honest with you, the business case was approved in 2002. And so they've done nothing for now 3 years. And now And so I'm across 3 different projects or programs, and this is one of them. And so I put the approach together and they agreed it. We got to the board, approved it, and we start. And I said, so what are we going to do? So are you mad? We've just had the approach that we've just agreed at the board, and now we're going to follow the plan and the approach that just got approved. And the plan being, the first part is let's define the vision. And they go, oh, so where should we start? It's like,
you raise an interesting question there. You mentioned the business case. I'm going to get onto my high horse now. Because according to quite a few, how can I say, articles and stuff that I've read, there's not a lot of organizations that actually kick off projects with a proper business case. I think the PMI, the Project Management Institute, mentioned this some while ago. And what worries me is if you don't have a business case, you don't have justification to start the project, because the business case is justification. The other thing with a business case is that you can create a business case for a specific project, no problem, but we know that projects never go to plan. There's scope creep, scope change, you've underestimated complexity or whatever. So the one thing that's never done is if that happens, people don't revisit the business case. So if the business case contains a number of business benefits that you hope to achieve from actually implementing whatever it is you're implementing, they're no longer valid. Because you've had scope creep, you've had a scope change, or you've delayed by 3 months or whatever. So the business case is a living document. And if anything, absolutely anything changes during this implementation, for goodness sake, if you've got a business case, please, if you've got a business case, revisit the business case and the business benefits within that business case, to make sure that you're still delivering to what you said you're going to deliver. Okay, those business benefits might get watered down a little bit, because of the scope change, etc. But then you recreate the business benefits in a new business case. So you've got the business case that kicks off the project, justification, all the funds, etc., etc. And then you've got revisiting the business case Yeah, whenever something changes.
Yeah.
But I think it's good practice to revisit the business case anyway, even if
Yeah.
things don't change, because it's
Yeah.
still so the business case should still provide that vision. Going back to that subject again, it
Yeah.
should still provide
Yeah.
a
That
vision
should
for the
the
project or
staple that doesn't
program.
change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's always good to revisit and remind yourself,
Yes.
this is why we're doing it. So
Yep.
the
Yep.
big question, the why.
Yeah. Yeah. What's in it for me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely. I think some organizations do it with they're revisiting the business case and they call them initial or outline, and then they got a final version like these guys
Yeah.
do. But I think there's some missing in translation, or like you just said, they're watered down. It's so watered down. By the time it gets to the final, they've lost the whole thing. I was like, you may as well start a whole new project. You've changed the scope so much. This is not even the same project
Absolutely.
anymore. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the business change, there's never a final version. There's
Mm.
never a final version. Even
Yes.
when you go live, there is a version, but it's not
Yeah.
a final version,
Yeah.
because what you're going live with might look completely different to what you said in the first place, like
Yeah. Yeah.
you just mentioned. So,
Yeah. I
but
like that.
it's an interesting area that a lot of projects that get kicked off without a business case. And I've got a bit of a cartoon that I use in my training that says something like, the CXO says, why we seem to be doing a lot of change and what are we getting out of it? And their assistant says, wait a minute, and let me check for you. Okay, I've checked for you, and all I've been told is that by the C-suite, stop all this messing about and asking these stupid questions. Just get on with it. Don't worry about a business case. So what do you do? What do you do? If you get told to
Yeah.
get on with it without a business case, what do you do? You can't say, no, I can't because there's no
Yeah.
business case.
Yeah, that, as long as you don't end up being the scapegoat, which is most likely if you're external, is the situation, is that you are the scapegoat because nothing was written down, so they can pin a lot of things on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to watch that. All right, so there's a lot of takeaways there. I don't know if I'm taking notes because you're dropping some gold there, Ron. I don't know. I'll see if I can sum it up at the end. But there's basically, I think the summary is that there's an education process, and I think
Yep.
thus in change has got to educate, and from up and I call it the 3 L's in the organization: the layers, language, and levels. You got the layers: strategic, operations, and implementation. They all speak a different
Yep.
language at a different level of detail.
Yep.
And ours, and I think
Yep.
you're saying those similar words, is about we're the conduit, piggy in the middle. Is that we've got to
Yep.
interpret, keep everyone happy, look them in the eye, shake their
Yep.
hand, build a rapport, and get and deliver the things that need to deliver for one reason: the vision. And if we're lucky, it was defined at the
Yep.
beginning and didn't change.
Yeah. Absolutely. Totally agree. It's a very good summary.
All right. Okay, great. I've got that one. Okay, now part two. Part two. Now, like, ladies and gentlemen, just a reminder, as Ron just said about the reminder, is that Ron has I think I had a couple of professors on here. They might be more academic than they were practitioners. No disrespect, but they were like academics, not practitioners. And I must say struggle with it, but I see the difference between academia and like I got asked to put my work into my university, flew out here, the alumni or the public relations for the alumni, and want to get my framework into the university. And I said, why? They said, because there's a gap between industry and academia, and we try to close it. And I said, how do you do that? And they said, well, we get people who are leaders in the industry to come back to university and teach what they're teaching in industry. I said, oh, okay. I said, that's interesting, because otherwise you get the other side is where PhD students will do their research and it's based off theory and to come up with a model or a
Yeah.
framework, and then that gets fully implemented. Did you guys actually implement that, or is it something you created as part of a PhD program? Yeah, so when we talk about, so when I'm saying here, Ron is a practitioner. Ron is a practitioner of many years experience across the world, different genres, cultures, industry sectors. So, Ron, now going into your clients and also coaching and with your own training program, is there a particular approach that you follow? And if you could, step us through it.
There is an approach I follow, and it's my approach. I developed what I call the practical framework approach to change way back in 2005. Okay,
Nice one.
but it's not a sort of something that you need to follow in a hard and fast way.
Yep.
you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this, you have to do
Mm-hmm.
that. One of the things that after I developed it, any project I went into, I said, okay, I've got a framework, but what I want to understand is what you have as an organization
Yep.
in terms of internal capabilities, because I can marry up your internal capabilities with what I say. As an example, communications. Most organizations have a communications department. One of my foundations of change in the practical framework approach to change is communication. Let me understand how you do things, what
Yep.
sort of mechanisms you use, and so forth. Let's align ourselves together. I do
Yep.
things this way, you do things that way. Let's
Yep.
agree how we do it.
Yep.
Okay, you're now working together. Learning
Yes.
and development is similar. HR in terms of change to roles and regulation, roles and responsibilities is similar, and all of that sort of stuff. So identify your internal capabilities
Yep.
and align them with my own model, with a frame.
Yep.
No, don't. I'm not
Yep.
going to call it model. I call it framework.
Yep.
And what you do then is you build and not buy. So you don't go in with
Yeah.
a bit of paper that says I'm certified. Look, this is how I'm going to do it. You go and say, this is how I think it should be done, but I need to understand how you can help me as an organization. And I need to align those sort of capabilities with what I
Yep.
do.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so you build a specific model that takes into account their culture, their understanding of
Yep.
change and what they actually do internally. And you build a bespoke model for them and say, here we are, this is how we're going to do it. This is where you fit in, this is where I fit in. And I've done this so many times now, and it has never been an argument with the C-suite to sign it off with the
Mm-hmm.
steering board. It's never been an
Yep.
argument. They've always said, hey, this is great. This is
Yep.
wonderful, because what you're doing is you're actually taking into account what we have, what we do, our
Yes.
culture, how
Yep.
we do things, etc.,
Yep.
with your framework and your years of experience and so forth. And the two married together are going to create a successful project.
Yep.
And to be honest, and I have to be, it hasn't worked sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
but in a majority of cases,
Yep.
yes, it has.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things I teach on my driving change management course. Is the second half of it is all about my practical framework approach to change. Excuse me a minute, I've got
Yeah.
to get frog in my throat.
Well, you're speaking a lot. That's
So
why. Go for it.
I think that's still practical. I think that I've got a couple of trainees at the moment from Southampton University, and I went through models and methodologies, and I went through my framework, and I went through
Mhm.
Kurt Lewin, and I went through Cotter, and I went through ProSci, had the pros and cons I got from ChatGPT,
Yep.
etc. And I said to them at the end, hey, what do you think? What do you think of my framework when you compare it with the ProSci's, the Lewins, or the Cotters of
Yeah.
the Whisperer? And I
Yep.
said, there's a lot more detail in it. I said, yes, there is. Yeah. And
So
that
he's a
helps
practitioner.
because it
Yeah.
actually helps you make decisions. Yeah.
Yes.
Because there's
Yes.
more detail.
Yeah.
And and I did go that just in a very similar manner, the way I normally, when I created the framework, how I deliver it by aligning it with internal capabilities. They said they like that because, again, that creates the buy-in from organizations
Yes.
because they recognize that you've actually taken a notice of how they do things.
Yes. Yep.
So you're not going in and saying, I'm going to do it my way.
Yeah.
Shut
Yeah.
up. Let me get on
Yeah.
with it. I'm the
Yep.
expert. You're not the expert. The experts are internal. The
Oh,
experts are those
yes.
people that are doing
Yes.
things within the organization.
Yep.
Yeah. And you can learn a lot from those organizations. And that is why I made a distinct decision when I stopped going into financial services organizations to actually get that cross-industry experience and that understanding and that knowledge how things happen in other
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
organizations.
I like that. I like that you're saying there about you go in and understand what they do at the moment. Like I get that when they will know that like you've got a piece of what you call a body of work, right? And so I have one, and they'll say that no one will know on the project when I start that I might have written a book or something. And then the guy introducing me, who I'm reporting to, will ask me to come in. They would say, "Oh, by the way, Heath wrote a book. He's got it all covered." And I was like, "What?" And he never told me that he'd read my book. And then so the projects start to learn that I wrote a book. I said, "Yeah, look, my whole goal here is I've got this book here, and I pull it out and I go, my whole job is to bang you over the head until you're blue in the face with it." And they go, "You're joking." And I said, "Of course I'm joking." I said, "Of course I'm joking. If anyone comes in here with any method or models or tools or templates and wants to bang it over your head until you're blue in the face, you got the wrong guy." You've got
and,
and there's
that's
yeah, that's a
that's fine,
yeah,
because I'm assuming that you've written your book based on your experience about what
yes,
works and what doesn't work, etc.
yeah.
Get out. I don't understand your model and your way of doing things. Here it is, bang. Right?
Yeah, and it never
And
works, right? It never works. So your point is, let's understand what you do, which I tell them. I said, my job is to understand what you're doing, see what's missing, and we fill in the gaps. And so it's the same thing you're
yeah,
saying is that you understand what they're doing, and then you can offer some suggestions, and then fill in the gaps until you. I think you're saying to build competence or capabilities. Like,
yeah, you're right.
yeah,
One of the things I didn't actually cover, what you mentioned, the sort of academia and the sort of industry
yeah,
side of things, so the practical side of things. I'm not an academic. I never went to uni. Okay, I just went out to work straight from school because I
yep,
left Malta when I was
yep,
18, 19. Yeah. So I thought, and I didn't get very good grades in my sort of GCSEs and stuff like that. So I thought I need to go out to work. Okay.
yep,
So I never went to uni. I don't regret it. Okay. I don't like Okay, I have maybe a misunderstanding about academia, and I've been pulled up about this before, but I don't care. I don't like academia because it seems to be too structured. It seems to
rigid,
be, I have
yeah,
to do this kind of research. I have to make sure I quote the right people, etc., etc. So it's not in any way practical. And I
mm,
think I've got an article in my articles thing on LinkedIn about, can can academia deliver change management training in a practical perspective, in a practical and pragmatic way, or something similar to that?
yeah,
And I argue the fact that they can't, because it's too much based on theory.
yeah,
Having
yeah,
said that, I've got a couple of papers on academia dot something or other
or
dot co,
edu.
yeah, which sort of has created a fair bit of interest. But again, they don't quote anything. They just quote practical experience or the results of surveys and stuff.
Yes, yeah,
So,
I am the same
um,
opinion. It's academia, they would benefit from practical application of themselves, and usually they sadly is. I
yeah,
sat on a call on a quite a famous, maybe infamous in our space in change or project management. Is they created a architecture framework, and they were
yeah,
actually creating it on the call at the time by some juniors in Asia. And I was like, you guys are literally making this up as you go. It's never actually been implemented, and now you're saying it's the new standard. Like, come
yeah.
on, and it's marketing here. This is, I call it marketecture. It's interesting, but not very useful. Man, disappointing.
Just going back to the academia thing, one of the things I needed to do when I came to Asia in 2011, I started looking, because I'd lost all this money that I mentioned earlier on.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
started looking for jobs, and one of the things that prevented me from getting jobs was lack of experience in Asia, because of the different way they practice change. So what
yeah,
I did was I did a high level survey or research into
yeah.
the cultural dynamics that impact change and transformation in Asia.
Oh
Yeah.
wow. Yeah,
And I covered 14 countries with certain dynamics,
yeah,
yeah, and about 20 people in each country. And I came up with different perspectives of how different countries in Asia practice change because of their cultural dynamics.
yeah.
And it covered like from India and Pakistan down to Singapore and
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Malaysia and places like that, Japan and so forth. And the interesting thing was, it's quite interesting because I live in this country now, Thailand, is
yeah.
that Thailand was a complete outlier.
Oh
It was
wow.
like they were completely different than any of the other sort of results.
Yeah,
Most of the other results either were the same sort of dynamics, but
yeah, yeah,
Thailand had three completely different dynamics. So that kind of told me I don't think I can practice change the way I think I should practice change here in Thailand. I did try a couple of times, like I mentioned before,
yeah, yeah.
but
Yeah, adopt.
it never really worked. They couldn't understand it. But yeah, that was an interesting one. I was going to follow it. I did one in 2013 and I did another follow-up in 2020. I was going to do another follow-up again just to see if anything had changed, but I haven't got time again. Yeah, because I'm doing all this training.
Okay, so in terms of
Yeah,
your approach, so there is maybe three major parts to it, maybe, and it is first of all, it is understanding what the organization does. It's the first step, is
Yeah.
going in there and with your background,
Yeah.
open mind,
Yeah.
your skills and transferable from different sectors and industries.
Yeah.
And then the second part,
Yeah.
I think the audience might have missed that when you said build. So there's three options of doing change, right? You can do it buy, build, or borrow. And so you're going to buy it in, it's going to be temporary, not going to stay. Build it,
Yeah.
you're going to bed it, and it's going to stay and grow
Yeah.
and hopefully becomes internal. And to borrow is you're going to hire it, and then of course that's going to walk out the door. So the second part there is then you're going to build the competency within the organization, the ways of working.
Yeah.
So you said words to the word effect of now you're aligned. So you've
Yeah.
seen the gaps of, you've seen what they do, you've offered your suggestions or your approach, and you've married in the middle. And so now you're building your competency and leveraging, which I'm a big fan there of. That, so the audience, if you don't miss this or should pay attention, is about, which I will say when I go into clients, like I've got an approach, like you say. So I don't have your business knowledge. Your guys in the department have the actual knowledge. And I did this at the Ministry of Justice on the Her Majesty's Court and Tribunal Service. Did a transformation program that had already been the second reincarnation they tried before with a couple of big fours. They got nowhere. They killed the project and restarted again. They said, we want to do it differently. And they brought me in. And then, so I got the approach approved by the sponsor and the director, or the program director and the program manager, project manager, and the core team. And said, now you got to go to the sponsor to get it approved. And so I went to the board. I'm doing the presentation, and the sponsor said, Heath goes, look, I like it. I like your 6 steps there. I want you to start at number 5. Because at the end of the process. And I said, look, so you're telling me you want to start in design effectively without understanding what you said earlier, the vision. I've been here for a couple of weeks and I've met all your staff, I sat in the workshops, but no one's talked about the vision. And the second part about control and governance, you haven't even defined what that looks like. And then the current state, you've already got a vendor in here doing requirements about what the solution looks like for problems that you haven't even defined. I said, he goes, Heath, he goes, we've done this before. And I said, yeah, I know. Then that's why I'm here, because you want to do it differently. And he goes, look, Heath, there's 53 sites around the country, and they do the same thing 53 different ways. And I said, great. We'll just pick one, and that's going to be like the baseline. And for some, it's going to be aspirational. For others, it's BAU. And so that we got a baseline to start with. And he's going, that's not making sense. But he didn't like it still. And he goes, I see what you're saying, Heath, but I want you to start at number 5. And I said, okay, if you want me to start at number 5, I'm basically doing what you had the last 2 guys do. And I said, if you give me 20 minutes, I'm going to go get that plan out of the drawer and give it to you. And he goes, oh, no. I said, that's going to be the same plan. And I said, so I've got an approach, but I don't have your team's knowledge. So I need their teams. So to your point of the SMEs, the experts are in the business. And so he seconded them. And long story short, I presented the final plan, the time and the roadmap. We've already recouped a lot of millions of dollars of lost fines that they thought had lost because of inefficient processes. They couldn't see them. He signed at the board. He goes, Heath, thank you. Had a minute taker there. He goes, want to stop the meeting and what this goes a special mention. Heath, thank you. You did what you asked for. You've delivered the time and the roadmap. We've already recouped this money, but you did the unthinkable. You have documented the undocumented business for the last 20 years. It's been undocumented. And I said, look, I had an approach, but I don't know the business. And you seconded these people to the business. It was actually them who did the work. These are the guys that went around the country, and they were the ones, your people, talking to your people. And that's why it wasn't me. It wasn't an external consultant. It was your own people talking to your own people. And that's why it was successful, because it was their own language. And I said, if anyone needs a thank you, it's not me, it's them. And to your point, the experts
it's interesting you talk about. Sorry, it's interesting you talk about starting at stage 5. My framework approach has three foundations, and what I try to say is work on these 3 foundations first. Those 3 foundations are sponsorship, communication, and stakeholders. Work on those foundations first. Make sure they're as strong as you can possibly get them, and then you can start putting the building blocks on top, like your sort of process change, your organization change, your impact analysis, your training, your business readiness, your user adoption, etc. You can build those building blocks on top of that solid foundation. But you can't go straight to process change, as an example, because you haven't built those foundations in the first place. No,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it just makes sense to me, and it hope it does to others as well. Thank goodness.
That's what you get from years of experience, right? Which you won't get from academia reading books. You get that from being on in the job,
Exactly.
on the
Yeah.
ground, doing the work. Okay, so ladies and
Uh,
gentlemen, so I'll play that back to you there, Ron. You said the foundations, sponsors,
yeah.
communication, and stakeholders. So we
Yeah.
get you guys are getting a master class here. I hope you're taking notes. And then you said from there is that you I'm taking notes. Is some from there you're building on top of that. But once you've got the foundations right,
Uh,
yeah, but you got to make
uh,
sure you get those. Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you need to spend about 3 or 4 weeks making sure those foundations are right. So you need to make sure that you talk to the sponsor, they understand their role and responsibilities, they understand after what they have to do during the project life cycle. You have to then work out community, you have to engage with your stakeholders and put them into some kind of structure, whatever it is, depends on the initiative. And you
Yep.
need to engage with them to understand how they want to be communicated to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
communication
what's the
needs. Yeah,
best form, the best mechanism for communication, and then
yeah,
you actually build a communication plan built
yeah,
based on your stakeholder engagement there.
yep,
So that's the key.
yes,
Sponsors, stakeholders,
yeah,
communication, they are the three foundations of project management. Wash your mouth out.
yeah. Change
Change
management.
management
Yeah, 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 yeah.
success.
Okay, sponsors, communication, and stakeholders.
Yep,
Clarity on the roles, responsibilities. A
yep,
communication plan, and I think your communication plan is
yep,
understanding what's their
yep,
format. They like it. They want an email, newsletter, a face-to-face,
yep.
a one-to-one.
Whatever,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Yep,
and the frequency they want it in. So you got a comms plan there.
yep,
Okay, so there's clarity, no misunderstanding. And I think we were talking about the business case earlier, is that it's a living document and it's going to
yep,
change. And you got to
yep.
be, and even as a change manager, you got to be changing. All right.
Yeah, I think you've got it. I think you've got it.
All righty. Okay, so we've got our three phases, maybe if it's the understand the current state, your alignment is your outcome, you're building the competency and capability. Now you've got the buy-in.
Yep,
And then
yep,
you're solicited the experts from the organization. So you've got your sponsors agreements, the sponsors,
yep,
your foundations, the sponsors, communication, and stakeholders. And now you're
yep.
off.
That, and then away you go. Boom, boom.
Okay.
There you
All
are.
right. All right. And okay. And
Get your sign off in blood, if possible. From your steering group.
yeah.
This is the way we're going to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, get it signed off. So if they complain or say, "Hey, this is what we're not signed up for," well, actually, you can say, "Yes, you
Yeah.
did. I've
Yep.
got it here. Look,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
this is what you signed off."
Yeah, and I think that so, ladies and gentlemen, that's a key part there is the sign off, right? So you've got the evidence of the agreement. Now, when I was saying with that Ministry of Justice, one of the first things we did is define the design principles because they were arguing with each other in front of the vendor when they're doing the requirements piece. I said the only reason why you guys are arguing because you're not agreed on the current state. And so let's help with that. We've got to find the vision and the design principle to contain the scope. So these are the things we're not going to do, and these are the things we are going to do. And so I printed them off. And every meeting we go to, and they started arguing, and I just pulled it out. And I said, here you go. Just a reminder, this is what you agreed to. It's the same thing here as you're saying is you've got to revisit and remind.
This is one of the reasons as my first building block is process change, because you need to understand your current state. Yeah, without understanding your current state, how can you actually ever think about moving to a new state? Because you don't know if it's going to be more efficient than your current state. So you need to understand what your current state is, so what your processes are, the people that actually undertake your processes, and whether they're slowed or whether they're cross-functional or whatever, and then how the implementation, whatever it might be, whatever it's a solution or whatever, it's going to impact those processes. Yeah, so you need to understand where you're going, because you don't know whether where you're going is going to be more efficient than where you are.
Yeah, and that was
Simple, really,
the sponsor at the Ministry of Justice. They wanted to start at the 2B state without understanding the current state. And his fear was it's going to take forever, and that's a never-ending exercise. And I said this, and that's, I think, talking to the points you're saying is about. I think that when you got book smart people who will, academics, not criticizing academics, but they're smart for they're in that position for a reason, and probably because they are academically or book smart. But the application is a separate thing, and a different thing is that I say in this space. A transformator, I don't like the term, I'm not a fan of the term business architect, because that classic business architect is someone that just creates designs, and I think you alluded to before, they'll throw it over to the business and go, there you go. Like the business is going, what the hell is that? And don't use it. So I say the business transformator is part strategist, they help with the direction, part designer, they help with the structure and the setup of the organization, part collaborator, because it's not in a, this projects are not not an island. You've got to collaborate with your colleagues, and you've got to negotiate, part negotiator. You have prioritization and trade-offs that you're having with your colleagues across the organization. So if you don't have that in place, you're basically throwing their designs at them and saying, yeah, good luck to you. And that's not going to go too well anyway.
Yeah, agree. Yeah.
Okay, so now you've got a section of your first part there was about the building blocks. So in the first, and understanding the current state. So you've got the current state. I'm assuming with change in business benefits, you've identified the benefits, qualitative, quantitative.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, what's the changes that need to be implemented on your current state processes to turn them into the to-be? Once they get implemented, they will enable the business to realize their business benefits. And then you come up with the change plan.
Just to go into a little bit more detail, you start with process change. That understandably could impact your organizational change, because if you're changing from silo to cross-functional processes, as an example, it's likely to create changes to the organizational structure. You then need to understand the impact of that change, of your change of processes and structure. Then you need to then do your training based on the new state, the current state, the future state. Okay, and then once you do that, you need to measure business readiness throughout the project life cycle. So you can put in a process where you can measure certain aspects of business readiness throughout the project life cycle. And you start with right at the beginning of the project, if possible, if you're not brought in late like you usually are. And you can measure that. And if your measurement is actually increasing all the time, that's fine, because that gives an indicator that what you're doing is getting through to people and people are understanding more. Okay. If you suddenly get a drop in that sort of feedback, then there's an issue there that needs to be sorted out. So you analyze that and you create interventions to make sure that that goes up again. Then that's a pre-go live. Post-go live is then you measure your usage and adoption. You expect people to actually adopt what you've been delivered. But there is adoption. There's a difference between adoption and usage, because adoption is about a number of people may adopt your process, but so a lot of people, may adopt your new solution, but not a lot of people use it. So what you need is both usage and adoption. Then after that is as you mentioned, managing business benefits. And then I think one of the key elements that is always missed is the continuous improvement, because change never stops. Even when you implement a new solution, people will find ways around it. People will find new ways. They don't need to follow the workflow because they can skip a screen or whatever. So you need to be able to capture that information to make sure that your processes are completely up to date. So if you're taking on any newcomer, etc., and you need to train them, then you have up-to-date processes. And that's in a nutshell how it works.
Alrighty. Okay, so I'm going to play it back to you. So make sure I got it. So when I engage you on a change manager on my program, so I know who I'm calling. So you've your current state as your first step. So the parts you were talking about, and I think when an architect will come in about, are you moving from a silo to the cross-functional processing? And because that has the impact of the organization structure, organization map, and also roles and responsibilities. There you are doing, you said, I think, gap analysis, impact analysis, understanding the degree of change, creating the training schedule, rolling out the training. You are managing and monitoring the readiness for change. You're surveying, more likely, questionnaires, maybe watching over their shoulders, looking for an increasing trend of they understand their readiness or is increasing. And so there's no need for any intervention there. They might not know what change means to them. And then so you're filling in the gaps there. And then once we're in implementation, you're looking for two parts. I think this is one probably a good lesson here for me is adoption is one thing, the usage is another thing. So that's a nice little tip there, Ron. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope you got that one. Is that you're looking for both adoption and usage, and then your ongoing business benefits, which I say in my approach is that of all the artifacts that you would produce, the business benefits register is one of the, if not the biggest or the strongest. but the most prominent one that you hand over to the business that lasts longer than the project. That the business themselves will now manage that well after the project is
Yeah,
finished. And because
exactly.
okay, I'm
Yeah.
more on the same. So maybe I might apply for a change manager role at one point in time. All right, and then you're looking at continuous improvement to make sure where there is opportunities to change, or the users are finding ways around the system or the process. Then the process will probably need to be updated so it's
Yeah.
efficient and
Yeah.
effective.
In a
All right,
nutshell.
all right, got
Hey,
it.
you've just gone through my course.
I don't think so. I think it might take some time. All right, so that's the Ron Leeman approach. The practical, if I've got this right, the practical change management approach. That's the name
Yes,
of the approach.
practical.
Okay.
No, it's a practical framework approach to change.
Oh,
PFAC, PFAC.
PFAC. Okay,
Yeah.
the practical framework for
Approach to
approach
change.
to change. Approach to change.
Yeah. I call
Practical.
it a framework because I don't
Yep.
want to put it in the same category as models and methodology, because it's not.
Yeah.
It's a framework.
Well,
And a framework isn't so overbearing.
I do. I got this. Where is it here? So I get this a lot with people who read my book, and they'll call me up and say, "Heath, I've read your book, and I'm trying to. thank you very much, but I'm trying to apply it by the word, but word to word." And I said, "Dudes, look, there's a little word there, and it says so your word that framework, which means
Yes.
it means you do two things with it. You apply it appropriately and proportionately for the context." What it
Yeah.
means, the other thing is that you don't do that. We'll pick it up. You don't pick it up
Yeah.
and bang people over the head until they're blue in the face. But you apply it, and that's when I talk about these successive projects. It's not about the methodology that you apply, it's the ability of the practitioner to apply it in two ways, appropriately and proportionately. And so for a practitioner like yourself versus academia who are just book smart, let's apply the whole thing. They don't take into account the complexity, or it's always not vanilla. There's so many competing demands going on. Those methods applied straight from the book don't take that into account.
At least you've got something heavy to hit people over the head with. I've been threatening to write a book for years and I've never got round to it. Although I always have in the back of my mind the ultimate change management approach, which is a baseball bat. If you don't do this,
yeah, for sure, that will definitely get some form of change. I tell you though, if you can find the time, although that was a labor of love, to get it down in paper, you've probably almost likely got it all there. It's just now putting it into one printable thing. Okay, so we've got the Ron Leeman practical framework approaches to change. Okay, now we've got that. Now the third part is, excuse me. Now, having many years, decades of experience as a practitioner across the world for all the different clients you've had in the different sectors, if you could do it all again, what would you do differently?
Okay. One of the things I wouldn't do is stay in a job for longer than I had to.
Okay.
I spent 20 years with the Ministry of Defence. I spent 8 years with National Abbey. And I got the bug for change whilst I was with the Ministry of Defence, but that was towards the end of my tenure, if you like. And I just wish I'd have done what I did eventually earlier. So that's one of the lessons, but obviously it's too late now. The other thing, I suppose, is probably to have called myself a change manager earlier than I did. I think I first called myself a change manager in about 2000 and something or other. And when you look at the change management timeline, that's about when change management came on the radar. And I've been a change manager since I took my first course in what was called work study at the Military College of Science can't remember where it was now. It's now called the Defence Academy, because I was working for the Ministry of Defence. And that was really all about change. So it was about change management. I could have gone back to Lewin, who first created his unfreeze, change, refreeze model in 1948. It was 2 years before I was born. Apart from those things, apart from not sticking to one job for too long, I think the other one is probably not deciding to become a trainer early enough. But
Okay.
I needed to work, so I went out as a consultant when I came here to Asia, obviously,
Yeah.
and I was forced to become a trainer by
Yeah.
COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, because everything shut down, so I couldn't do any
Yeah.
traveling. I couldn't do
Yeah.
any consultancy,
Yeah.
and on site and off site was not an option because you needed to stay off site, and off site
Yeah.
really didn't work with people.
Yeah.
Hybrid working was not a possibility, so I had to think about what I needed to do, and I
Yeah.
decided to become a trainer. I wish I'd have decided that earlier, because I
Uh-huh.
absolutely really I enjoy
Yeah.
my training. I love it's one-to-one, which is probably not ideal because it's hard to scale up,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
love talking to people on a one-to-one basis because you get a lot more information from people. You can actually build up a relationship with people over the 9 2-hour sessions. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I do actually cohort training. So I've done some sort of big organization training, but I do prefer the one-to-one approach. And I wish I'd have started training earlier. I think
Okay.
I found my sweet spot. which
Nice
uh,
one.
yeah, I've got 95% plus positive feedback for my training.
Wow.
Yeah, 95% plus,
Wow.
and I'm delivering like part practical, part theory, doing some research, etc.
Yeah.
Part what I used to do in the olden days. I've got what they call case studies
Yeah.
that were maybe 20 years old, but are still relevant today
Yeah.
based
Yeah.
on what I'm training. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's going down well. I could do with more trainees, obviously. That's one of those things that
Yeah.
people
Yeah. Okay. So,
make a decision.
so you're,
Yeah,
you the,
as I said, I found my sweet spot. I think I should have made that decision a lot earlier.
okay. So for the audience in a similar situation, is that if maybe it's a self-awareness, self-reflection part of some part of that of, I
Yeah,
mean, you move out of from the consultant to the trainer, you might have that. Am I like I had that with my book? Because I go into these projects and it's always the same thing and the same issues. And I'm going, what are the people not learning? And I go, and the guys that are in there already, some my colleagues, business architects, we're walking around with a business canvas model. And I'm going, okay, business canvas model is nice. It'll tell you the 9 elements of a business model, but that's not what you need for transforming an organization, particularly not for a business architecture. It's not going to tell you how you're structured. It's not going to tell you about how to communicate between each other. What are they passing between the different departments, divisions, the values? None of that. And so they got the wrong tool. And I go, I'm going to put it, I'm going to buy a book on the target operating model. There was no such book. So I wrote the book.
yeah,
And I was thinking when I was writing, I was going, do I even have a book in me? And like, Jesus, and sometimes I look at that and I go, wow, I wrote that. Wow. I think that's a lesson that you're having. And I even, so my self reflection of that is, do I even have a book in me? And I think now the lesson that Ron, and we talked about this before off camera, is I think the thing for you next is to write the book.
yeah. I
Just
think I
write
do
it.
have a book in me, to be
You
honest,
have a book, more than a book,
but
my friend.
it's just changing the focus of what I do,
I'm telling you, Ron, write the
and
book.
that's the issue at the moment. And I won't go into details, but
You'll find the
I think
time. You'll find
I'm
the time. Otherwise, you'll find the excuse. And there's a
yeah,
change manager. You should know this. And you talked about interventions.
true,
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Maybe the vision, create the vision. You're going to be around for many more years. Yeah.
Yeah,
So you
you're
ain't
right.
going
You're right.
anywhere.
I should focus, shouldn't I? I should give yourself a slap and say, get on with it, Ron.
I tell you, time will fast. Like it's already 6 months into the year already, right? How fast has that gone? And
Yeah.
the next 6 months, what could you do with a
Yeah.
book? Okay, so the lesson there is, sorry to cut you off there. So the lesson there is that you would have moved earlier, you would have called yourself a change manager earlier, and you would have moved out of maybe the genre of being a change manager to the teacher of the change manager.
I've got the content of a book. It's about 90, it's about 75, 80% there. And basically, I was going to call it the life and times of a change manager. And what it does, it takes me right from when I was in Malta, being to
Mm-hmm.
shape the person I was and how that changed me as an
Yeah.
individual. Then
Mm-hmm.
going through my years with the Ministry of Defence and the different projects I worked on, then going on to
Yeah.
working for Abbey and the different projects I worked on, then going on to the contract market and the different projects I worked on, then
Mm-hmm.
moving over to Asia and the different projects I worked on. So it's
Yeah.
there, 80% is there. I just need to say, you need to do it. I need to
Yep.
get the final 20% written. And that's difficult.
I think you maybe got 2 books at least in you. One is about the life of a transformation, a change manager from your
Yep.
journey. And then the other one is about if you wanted to make it just about your framework itself.
Yeah, I mean I think the framework approach would be easier to finish to write than the last 20% of the life and times of,
Yeah.
and because I've got all the information there, I train on it. I actually train on
Yeah,
it, so I've
yeah.
got all the information there
You
to
should do
input
it.
into the book. So
When
yeah,
I
okay,
when I wrote my book, I was
okay,
actually writing a book about the
yeah.
problems in the
Keep
industry.
keep keep on hassling me, Heath. Say,
Well,
write that book, Ron. Write that book, Ron.
well, I think it's evolution, right? Like I commented already, I've seen some changes on your LinkedIn, and I really like it. And so
Uh,
that's over evolution. So the next one is the book.
yeah. Okay. Done.
Okay. All
Deal.
right. Okay. I got Ron's commitment, ladies and gentlemen. You just got the goat of change management has just said, Ron Leeman has just said that he is putting the one of two books, and maybe the first one's going to be because he just quote unquote is that the practical framework of a managed approach to change is going to be in a book form by the end of the year.
Yep. Done. Okay.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, okay, we'll wrap it up there, Ron. Thank you very much. Okay, so this now, this will, I don't know, hopefully it's only going to be less than a week to put it up on YouTube, and then I'll tag you on LinkedIn and you can share it around to your network.
Okay.
If the people want to get in touch with you, I'll put in the show notes how to get a hold of you on LinkedIn, how to get in touch with you about the training, your courses that you offer, both the one-to-ones and the cohort. I'll put the link into the show notes that will come on to our website, but also on all the places that it gets shared on the podcasts, on SoundCloud and Apple and all those other ones. So they know how to get a hold of you, they want to get a hold of you. Sound good?
Sounds good to me. I'll send you a few links that you might be interested in.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
yeah, sounds good. Sounds really good.
Okay.
Yeah, just keep me in the loop.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, my friend. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining from Thailand. I hope the rainy season passes without too much drama. And for next week's event that you've got going on, I will send out the positive vibes.
It's dark now. It's dark because
Oh.
it's 8 o'clock. It's actually 8 o'clock here, and
Wow.
nearly my bedtime. Listen, Heath,
Oh.
thank you very much for having me on your show. It's been quite a while since we started, but I've really enjoyed talking about the things that I like talking about, which is change management. And I hope that your viewers also get this impression that I like what I do. I enjoy what I do.
It shows.
In my sort of, I don't know what to call it, life.
Your purpose.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
So thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure.
Great.
Okay. Enjoy your day and have a good sleep.
Okay. Cheers.
Okay, thanks, Ron.
All right.
Cheers, buddy.
Bye.
Okay, see you.
Bye. Bye. Bye.